Welcome to the WyldLyfe podcast. This is your host, Jess Hayes. I'm here today with my friend Dakota. He's a hunter, fisher, outdoorsman, and expeditionist. How are you doing today, Dakota?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm good. So we got a lot of topics planned for today. If you have not seen our first podcast, make sure you go over to WyldLyfe Podcast on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. If you want the notifications when we post, click that bell. If you also want to follow us on Facebook, you can follow us on WyldLyfe Podcast on Facebook or like our page. You will also get updates there. So let's go ahead and get started. What are we going to start off with today?
Well, we'll start off with the background of the way we met, and all of that. So the way we met is we met actually in second grade through Jess actually got held back for
Just academic reasons. Just make sure I'm in the right place that I should be before I move on.
and we actually met on the playground playing dodgeball. We was the last two left. It was a very good match. I don't exactly remember who won, but
I don't know, but dodgeball seems to be the way that I met or, got to be friends with a lot of people, which is the same way that, me and Dylan really kicked off of dodgeball too, as you heard in the first podcast. But yeah, we met in second grade, and my dad was the baseball coach at the time. Dakota's dad was an assistant coach, and we played baseball all the way up through middle school together. And then come high school, he'd worked and he made money instead of playing baseball, so I ended up playing on my own. But that's really how we kicked it off, as we played sports together, and it was always a good time. We played football together also, so we've had a lot of times together. So we've hung out a lot after we graduated, which was back in 2016. We've hunt together, fish together, and we have some pretty good stories for you guys today.
to add on to that, when we played baseball, especially in middle school, we were the best shortstop second base combo until we actually both got moved to the outfield, and then I played center field, he played left field, and there was really nobody that could hit the ball deep on us that way.
Yeah, we always did pretty good together. So we're gonna kick it off today, just jumping right into it. We're gonna start with guns. As you can see, I went ahead and wore my good sweater today, and we're gonna start off with what types of guns that we use, what different types of hunting we use these guns for, and then also some that we have just for for fun, for recreational reasons, which is a lot of our guns are recreational guns.
Right.
So I'll just kick it off right now. So we have all these casings in front of us, and Dakota brought a few, and then I also pitched in a few, just so you guys have an idea of all the types of guns that we have and use for different types of hunts.
Right.
So just to kick it off with the guns, you see here is shotgun shells, and then we have some rifle shells, and then we have some handgun ammo also. So take it away. What do we have here?
So we have a 3.5-inch 12 gauge turkey shell, which goes to a 12 gauge high brass shell, a 12 gauge low brass shell, a 20 gauge high brass shell, and a 28 gauge, which I know is hard to believe, but a lot of people use 28 gauge for not only trap shooting but also hunting. And you can find all these shells, or at least most of these shells, in high brass and low brass, and from anywhere from 2 3/4 to 3.5-inch shells, depending on the gauge that you're using. Once you get past your shotgun shells, you start going into rifle shells, which we have a 7.62. This is your shell.
Yeah, that's a 6.5 Creedmoor.
Then to a 243 and a 350 Legend, to a 223, which is also in 5.56. And then you get into your handguns, which is 45, 357, 38 Special, 9mm, 32, and then you actually go back into a rifle shell, which is a 22.
Which is also a handgun caliber also. There are 22 shorts, which are made for handguns, but this one in particular is a long rifle shell. But anyhow, just moving back in time here. So these right here, what would you use these for when you're hunting?
Well, it really all depends if you have a high brass shell or a low brass shell. If you have a low brass shell, with any gauge, you're probably going to use that for skeet shooting, if you're trying to pattern a shotgun, or, as little as dove and squirrel as well. When you get in your high brass shells, that's when you get really into your rabbit hunting, your pheasant hunting, upland game hunting, turkey hunting as well. You can also buy these in slugs, which would get you into deer hunting and big game hunting, depending on what you're hunting.
Okay. So then we move over to the rifle. So some of these actually cannot be used for hunting here in Ohio and other surrounding states because they don't allow bottlenecked cartridges for hunting in Ohio. We don't have enough hills or enough backstops that would allow us to hunt with those because these travel too far. Especially these top three travel too far for anywhere in Ohio. These could travel up to miles, and if they don't hit something sturdy enough or heavy enough to stop them, they will continue until they hit a house or something even more devastating. But once you get down into this right here, this is a 350 Legend. I actually just built this AR about a month ago, right around Christmas time. I built a 350 Legend. It's going to be used for mostly hunting, but also it can be recreational. And we know that because it's in the AR platform, which both of us have a 223.556 AR.
Correct.
So the story about the 223 is it's really funny. So I originally bought one, and then I added all kinds of stuff to it. I bought just a regular stock Smith & Wesson MP15, and then I went ahead and slapped an Aero Defense upper on it, and then just put all kinds of aftermarket like a laser and just other home defense and close range things on it. And then when I showed Dakota, and he knows and he likes this type of gun, he likes ARs, but he was like, I'd probably never buy one of those. You remember this?
Right. Originally I was completely against ARs and really any caliber, just for the simple fact that I didn't really need or have a use for it. But once I realized that you could use them for hog hunting and coyote hunting, specifically predator hunting or nuisance hunting, then I really got into it, and I started building my own AR, which the story behind that is we actually went to a gun shop. Previous to that, we went to a gun show, but at the gun shop, there was one for a certain amount of money, and I didn't have the full amount of money. And Jess, being the good friend that he is, he actually spotted me some money right there, just so I could get it to start building it. Which, of course, since then I've paid back. But that's really how it all started, and especially with these wild hogs moving in from the south. And there was also an animal preserve in Vienna, which they just kind of tore down the fence and took most of the animals out, but the hogs stayed, from my understanding. And now they're moving in from the north as well.
So I ended up talking him into getting this one, and I ended up spotting him a little bit of money, and he got it. And like you said, he paid me back in the end, so it's all cool. It's all zeroed out. But now he has his very own AR-15 that shoots a 223.556, which is really nice. We take him out to the range and we just shoot together. Find what our groups look like, work on our groups, just really build on how we shoot the gun and how accurate we can be with them. And the nice thing about 223s is in other states you can hunt with them. Here you can hunt with them for predators. You can't use them for deer hunting. But you can hunt predators, like he said. We can hunt coyote with them. We can hunt, wild hog down south. But also we use them to just for a recreational gun. We go out, we shoot together, and it's always a good time.
Right.
It's definitely an investment, though. It's not cheap when you start building one of these.
And that's the biggest thing that a lot of people look at, that getting into guns, hunting, really anything that has to do with hunting. Bow hunting, gun hunting, whatever type of hunting you're doing, it does get expensive, and it really all depends on how in depth you go in it, if you will, because you could buy just the minimum bow or the minimum gun or the minimum whatever, and go out there and do what you're gonna do. But if you really get into it, like, it's one of my favorite hobbies. I absolutely love hunting. I mean, I've spent probably thousands of dollars into it, and that's just with camo, guns, bows, and then building guns as well for different types of hunting, as predator hunting, nuisance hunting, and so on and so forth.
So just to go off of a question here, so what originally brought you into hunting? Like what made you want to hunt?
So growing up, between when I was born to 7 years old, because I started hunting when I was 7, my dad went hunting with a few of his buddies, and he was always bringing something back. It seemed like, he was always bringing back squirrels or pheasant or deer or whatever, and I wanted to be a part of that. And I begged and begged and begged, and finally, when I was 7 years old, my dad told me that he would get me an apprentice license. And for those that don't know what an apprentice license is, it's a way for you to take hunters out and let them enjoy the outdoors and hunt and see what they can do without having to go through the hunter safety course. But they do have to be with a certified hunter at all times. You can get 3 years of that, which I did. I took my test in 5th grade, passed it, so on and so forth, got my hunting license, and now I'm on my own. But it was really my dad that got me into it. I mean, my dad would let me shoot the 22 and the 410 and the 20 gauge in the backyard, crossbows, stuff like that. I grew up around that stuff. I know how to use it properly. I'm properly trained on everything, and that's really what got me into it is my dad doing it, all the time, and me just really wanting the will to go with him, but not able to because I wasn't old enough yet.
Yeah. And that's the same way it worked out for me. I started with watching my dad bring home a deer when I was about, I would say, like 8 years old. He brought a buck home. It was the first buck that I've ever seen. I was probably about 8 years old, and he brings this 10 point home, and it was just this beautiful creature, and to find out that this is a wild animal, this is wild game that you can legally hunt. I was like, that's something that I really want to do. So then that's where I started. Before I even had to make my own investments, he handed me a gun, and he handed me multiple guns throughout my life, him and my grandpa both, and just said, they want me to just experience what they got to experience when they were young and when they were kids, and that's just how it all kicked off.
Right,
and
definitely.
Then after that, once you get your first kill, that is like something different. So what was your first kill? Wild game, it could be anything.
So the first time I ever killed anything, I was 7 years old. Me and my dad went squirrel hunting. We went down to some public hunting land that we have around here, and we were using 22s. And he told me that I had first shot. That's just kind of how my dad is. He gives me first shot, depending on what we're hunting, depending on the year, who killed the year before, and so on and so forth. Um, but we were squirrel hunting down at some public hunting land. We was walking back through the woods, and we seen a squirrel, and it went up to the top of this tree, and we both shot at it about the same time, and it fell out of the tree, ran around, went up another tree. I actually shot this squirrel climbing up a tree. I also shot him in midair and made him do a flip, which was the coolest thing in the world. To me, at 7 years old, it's the coolest thing in the world to see, your dad and you both out there, doing something that you truly love. And we ended up getting that squirrel. He was full of holes, but we skinned him out, we cleaned him, and we ate him anyway. And I mean, that was my first true kill. Now, and I've said this before, and I'll say it forever. It's not always about the kill. When you're hunting, it's truly about being in God's creation. It's about being out there in the outdoors, doing what you love, pursuing what you love, and don't let anybody ever talk you down or ever take that away from you. It's something that you will always have a passion for.
So my first kill was actually a pheasant. So I didn't really do much squirrel hunting or any type of real like small game other than pheasant and rabbit. And my first kill, we were out pheasant hunting, and I was probably right about 12, 13 years old. And my little brother at the time had his apprenticeship license. He didn't take the course yet. And we went out, and I ended up getting 2 pheasant. And, that's the bag limit here in Ohio. So that was a great experience. Both of them were in flight when I shot them. So this was like the first real test. You skeet shoot for, multiple days, and then you go out and you get to shoot your first bird in flight. And it's like, once you learn to hit a disc that's only 4 to 5 inches wide, you will hit a bird that's, you'll hit a bird that's, 8 to 12 inches long, even more sometimes. There's some big pheasant here in Ohio that they do release on. So went out there and shot 2 of them back in this cornfield at some public hunting land, and it was just a great experience. I'm there with my little brother and my dad. It's like, not only am I showing my dad that I'm capable, but I'm also, showing my little brother the ways. Like, I'm showing him the ropes. Like, this is,
Right.
I was really bringing him into it also. So let's go ahead and move on. So down to the handgun ammo. This is more recent. So like up here in your shotguns, your dad can gift you this at whatever age. You can be 12 years old and you can own a shotgun. It's not, I mean, really, it's none of them are in your name shotgun wise,
Right.
but you can own your own shotgun in your name per se. If your dad gifts it to you and says this is yours, you put it in your room in your gun cabinet. You keep it locked up, and that's your gun to use. It's no longer your dad's. It's
Definitely.
now yours. And that was the first gun that I got. Was that the first gun that you got? Probably was a shotgun of some sort or a 22.
The first gun that my dad actually bought me, and he said it was mine, and it was and it was one of the really the best days of my life, honestly. My dad bought me a 410 shotgun.
Yeah, and that was my first gun too, a 410.
And I had a 410 youth pump. It held 4 in the bottom, 1 in the chamber, and I absolutely loved that gun. And it actually turned out that when my sister came of age, she started using it, and we got her an apprentice license. Since then, my sister really hasn't followed hunting. It's just kind of one of those things that she wants to be out there with us and not really hunt. So we bring her out, let her sit, let her mess with the calls and rattle and whatnot, when we're deer hunting. But she, as far as her hunting, she doesn't really hunt as much as she did when she was, first starting out.
Yeah. So same thing with me. My first gun, and you remember this gun. It was a 410. It was a single shot. You have one single shot, and you have a hammer. You have to cock back to shoot it. Same thing with this gun though. Like you can break the barrel, and you can unscrew it, and you can even put a 22 barrel on it.
Right.
You remember that one?
I remember us pheasant hunting, and this was like it was yesterday, man. But I remember us pheasant hunting. I had my 410 shotgun pump,
Mm-hmm.
and you had your single shot, and you carried a butter knife in your back pocket because the shells
Yep.
didn't eject, and so when you would shoot, you'd have to break it down and then pop it with a butter knife real quick and put another shell in.
So what happened was when you break the barrel, it would have like this little tongue that was supposed to. It was spring loaded. It was supposed to flip up and kick the shell out.
Automatic ejector.
So if you break that barrel, it's supposed to kick the shell out. Well, you break the barrel, and this little tongue, the spring or something must have got gummed up and caught. It wouldn't do that. So then I had to take a butter knife and sit there and try to shove it under the very outside edge of the shell, and I'd have to try to pry it out. And if we couldn't do that, then I remember at one point we also carried a muzzle loader rod with us, and we shoved it all the way down the barrel and just boom, smacked it out.
Yep.
Because for a while there, the shell would, after the bullet went off or after the shell went off, it would actually compress a little bit on the brass, and you wouldn't be able to really fit a butter knife under there. So we carried a rod with us, and we just made it work the way it could.
Right. Now, some of your shells, like we were talking about, different types of shells. Some of your shells are rimfire, which means they shoot, or rimfire, which means they shoot from the outside edge, like a 22. I mean, I don't know if you can see that.
You can see it. There's no prime on this shell, so that's what he's explaining.
Yeah, the outside, the whole thing, the whole butt of it, if you will, is a primer, and that's what the hammer hits. Depending on where it hits, it really doesn't matter. It always goes off. Now, if you have a center fire shell, like a shotgun shell or one of our rifle shells, the hammer has to hit directly in the center to hit that primer, and that's what makes the shell go off. And I mean, it's just and depending on the gun you have, is where your hammer's gonna land, and the hammer always lands generally in the exact same spot.
Yeah, usually. So as for the handguns, though, this is something that we've kind of brought into the family of guns per se, just within the past like 2-3 years, because we just recently turned 21 in the past couple of years. So if we did have a handgun to use, or we did shoot a handgun, it was always our parents, our dads.
Right. We just turned 22 less than 6 months ago, both of us.
Yep. So these are very recent. As for handguns, though, we are 21 now, so we went ahead and took the class, and we ended up getting our concealed carry, and that's when we started building up our handgun collections. And just go ahead and explain, like, what was your first handgun that you bought? And this goes for a lot of people. Like, usually their first handguns are this exact handgun.
Right. So my first handgun I bought was a Ruger Security 9mm. I absolutely love that gun. I believe it's 7.5 inches long total, and about 5 inches high. Don't quote me on that, but I'm assuming that's what mine is. It's close, but that would be this shell here, which I shoot hollow points out of mine for defense reasons. Everybody knows that the world is crazy nowadays, and you never really know what's going to happen. But I carry mine for defense reasons, so I shoot hollow points. My next handgun, I bought a 357. Since my handgun was chambered in 357, I have a 357 revolver Taurus. I can also shoot 38 specials out of it. So I have both shells. Now I'm not knocking one shell or the other, but the 357 is a little bit bigger and a little bit taller. So that means you do have a little bit more powder behind it. So you have a little more range, a little bit more bullet velocity, depending on your training. From then, I went to a 45 Colt. I'm shooting a long Colt. And the gun that I bought is actually a replica of the 45 Colt Army. I absolutely love my gun. It's a single action revolver. It's beautiful. I mean, you can ask anybody, and that gun, they'll say that gun is beautiful.
It is a super nice gun. It's like almost like an old Western cowboy looking type of gun, and it's super nice revolver. But back to the 9mm, like I was saying about the 9mm, this is usually most people's first handgun. A 9mm is like your most basic self-defense round. Yeah. It's not the smallest, but it's also not the biggest. It's like perfect for beginners to get off starting. And that's the same thing I started with. My first handgun was a Glock 26. It's the subcompact Glock. It's like one of the smaller ones, but there are smaller, like the Glock 43, which is a very, very small single stack 9mm. I got a double stack. It's the smallest double stack that you can get, and that was what I ended up getting from my first handgun. And then you can almost say gifted. My cousin Quentin actually sold me this 32 handgun, which is a super nice piece. It is definitely historic. It is built in between like 1909 and 1920 something, and these are also revolvers, super old looking, and just all around, just like Dakota's, it's like an old cowboy looking historic gun. Super nice gun.
Now, since we're touching on revolvers, my dad has a 22 revolver. It shoots the 22 long rifle shells. It was gifted to him by, it would have been my mom's dad. So it would have been my grandfather on my mom's side, and it holds 8 shells. And he shoot prairie dogs with it. He used to shoot. He shot a Florida panther, if you will, also known as a mountain lion or cougar. He shot that with it. That was his defense gun when he owned his farm in Florida.
All right, so now moving on, we're just going to tell a few stories about, different types of hunting that we've done together and, some experiences that we've had together. So I'll just go ahead and kick it off right now, the most recent story that we have about hunting. And we also have a few video clips that we're going to throw in right about here. Anyways, on this specific hunting trip, we were hunting multiple days in a row, me and him both, and we were going to different spots. We were also hunting together in the same spot, and we were just kind of all over the place. Didn't have like a super set schedule of how we were hunting either. We were kind of just winging it at the time. This was on public land, so this wasn't our private property that we have permission to hunt on that we actually keep on a certain schedule. So we were kind of just hunting it when we had time. And you can go ahead and take it away. You shot at a super nice buck and hit a super nice buck, and the story doesn't end as well as we would want it to.
So I believe it was November the 10th of last year, 2019, and Jess didn't go hunting with me that day, and I was sitting up in my tree stand. I was sitting about 20 feet in the air, give or take, about 15, 20 feet, and it was freezing. I dressed for medium weather. It was cold that night, and not to mention I was higher, so it was colder because I had the wind and whatnot. It was about 15 to a half an hour before, 15 minutes to a half an hour before sunset, and I was getting ready to climb down because I was freezing. I was shaking so bad, and I was getting ready to climb down, and I heard something coming up through the woods, and most people describe something coming up through the woods as and that's what I heard. So I turned around, and there's a buck of a lifetime for me, especially as a small town kid coming from Atwater, northeastern Ohio, and I'm like, all right, here we go. We're gonna sit in the stand a little bit longer. Now, I shoot right-handed, so my release is on my right hand, but I grab my bow with my right hand, so I was kind of in a dilemma.
Yep.
I ranged where this deer was coming to, which would have been about 20, 25 yards. He made a right on me and followed this trail. I ended up shooting at about 35 to 40 yards, and I believe that I made a beautiful shot. I'm shaking like a leaf. I called everybody I know. I called my dad. I called, Jess, being my best friend. I called him. And they both rushed out there as fast as they could. My sister was actually on the recovery. And I climbed down, and we sat there. It seemed like forever. It seemed like a lifetime that we sat there waiting to hear from my dad. And unfortunately, I believe I hit this deer forward, front of the shoulder, because, buck fever does set in, and a lot of people that hunt know about buck fever.
And especially for your first, big trophy buck that you see.
And buck fever set in, and I was shaking, so I believe I did hit him forward, and we ended up never finding him. And fortunately, hitting him forward, there's no vitals forward, so that deer, it's possible that deer lived to graze and
season,
fight and live another day. But that went on for a while. We was out there for actually 2 days.
Yeah.
From about
2 full days.
The first day was about from 6 to when it got dark, and then we actually got kicked out by a park ranger that gave us an extra hour to look. The second day we got out there about 3 o'clock and looked, and we ended up losing a blood trail. Never found him, so I'm hoping for a full recovery, and that that deer lived to be in this coming season, because I'm gonna be looking for him.
So a little backstory: Dakota here is colorblind.
Right.
Your greens and reds don't match up very well. So actually, when Dakota shot he shot a deer about, what was it now, 2 years ago?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. So it's been 3 seasons now. He shot this deer on some public land that we have permission on. We were actually heading to the truck. We were done hunting for the day, and he goes, "Let's
That
just."
it was private land. You said public.
Oh, that.
But
Oh,
it was private land that we have permission on, and I shot him the Thursday of deer gun season at about 7:45 in the morning. We had to be at work at 8 o'clock.
yeah. So sorry. I meant this was on private land that we have permission on. And so we went ahead, and he's like, "Let's dip over this hill and see what we can see." And we weren't being quiet by any means. We were stomping up through there to get back to the truck. We had to be at work at 8. It was like 7:15, and we're like, "We're gonna do it. We're gonna just dip over this hill and look." Honestly, in my head, I was like, probably not gonna see anything because we just made a load of noise walking back through the woods.
And you actually was walking up towards the passenger door of the truck because at the time I had a Chevy S10, which I love that truck. Unfortunately, it died on me. But you was walking to the passenger door,
And that was the closest to the hill.
yeah. And I looked out, and there was 2 deer standing there. And I told him, I said, "There's 2 deer." And he goes, "No, there's not." And I said, "Yeah, there is. Look." And there was 2 deer standing there. So we dipped over the hill real quick, and I started grunting. Now a lot of people will say, a lot of people that hunt with me will say that I'm an animal whisperer. For whatever reason, I can call in almost anything, even even if they're 100 yards, 200 yards out, I can pretty much turn them and bring them my way. So we brought them in, and I shot what I thought was a big doe at 81 and a half yards.
Oh yeah, like 80 yards. So he's colorblind. So I ended up tracking this deer for him. I figured we'd just go into work late and everything would be fine. We tracked this deer for 2 miles. We actually tracked it from our private land that we have permission on all the way to public land, and ended up not finding it. Went to work. I ended up getting laid off that day. Got laid off, so I met back up with him and his dad that evening. We found that deer 2 miles away on public land. We followed the blood trail that I really had to track mostly for you because you're colorblind.
Right.
And we ended up finding it, and it had a single antler. It was a Elliott from open season. So he ended up getting that one. So let's just swap over, and we only have about 5 minutes left, so let's go ahead and tell some fishing stories. So we have some good fishing stories. It's another thing that we both do, and we have a good time doing, is fishing.
Right.
And actually, in the audience, we have a friend with us also that fishes with us quite often.
We were about 15, 16, maybe 17 at the time. And
definitely 16 if you're talking about the story I'm thinking.
And the lakes were drained, and we found a little spot that we thought might be, pretty decent. It was a little pool of water. There wasn't a whole lot feeding it, and we fished that through the rain in January. It rained so hard that day.
So we had what, a month left of fishing season before our license expires. So we're like, you know what? It's January here in Ohio. It actually has not been very bad winters the past almost 5 years. And this was about 5 years ago. This was right when the weather. This was like the first year that we did not have snow in January. It was like 45 degrees or 50 degrees out in January.
Yeah, we were in t-shirts.
And we were in t-shirts, and it was pouring down rain. We actually stole my mom's old minivan to use it because at the time we were either I was 16 and he was 15,
you were 16.
I was 16 and he was still 15. I just got my license and I didn't have a vehicle at the time, so I stole my mom's minivan. Went and picked him up. We went to this spot. There's a little culvert pipe that feeds this small, probably, I don't know, what would you say, about an acre pool of water?
Oh, not even. It was probably about 60, maybe 70 yards long and about 40 or 50 yards wide.
And we fished this culvert pipe, and we caught, what was it, 6 Big Fish Ohio this night of crappie.
Yeah.
We caught 6 crappie over 13 inches. Actually, 3 of them were above 15. 2 of them were 18-inch, I know for sure, because I got the pin for one of those.
Right.
And then one of them was like 16 and a half, and the rest were right within there. These were some big crappie.
Yeah, we
for
filled
Ohio.
our stringers that night.
Oh, we filled the whole stringer. And I have a picture. I'm going to drop it right here.
We actually have both of our parents calling us constantly, telling us to come home because we're going to get sick because it's raining. And we kept telling them, hey, we're catching fish. We're not leaving yet.
Yeah.
All right, so to touch on one more fishing story, we have a little spot that we found. It's actually now covered full of poison ivy. So we never really go there because we're both super allergic to poison ivy. Even just looking at it, we get it, which is crazy, but it's true. But we always double when we go there. And a double is, anybody that's fishing or anything like that, a double is when you're catching or killing, depending if you're hunting, two at the same time or right there after. And we always double there with nothing super big. We're not catching 45, 50-inch catfish, which would be super nice. But that,
Yeah,
you catch stuff like that in the Ohio River. But we don't catch like 2, 3, 4-inch catfish either. They're generally about 15 to 16 inches. So like the good eating size catfish.
Yeah. So a little to back off of that, down below there's a dam right, but down below that dam in this same spot, we went there. What was it, like 4 months ago? It was right over this past, like I would say right around fall area time.
Yeah, just the end of the summer, beginning of fall.
Same thing. They started draining out the lake because they drain it every year. And we went down there right when that last little pool was filled, right below the dam, and we were fishing. And I caught this striped bass. It's a hybrid striped bass. It's farm raised, and
they're called wipers.
Wipers.
Yeah, they're white bass striped bass combo.
And it was about, I don't know, I would say right about 18 inches. Is that fair? 18, 20?
Oh, for sure.
And it probably weighed, like it was a fat one. Like when I held it for the picture, it actually left indents in it because that's how fat it was when I was holding it.
Yeah, it was probably every bit of 10 pounds.
Oh yeah, and it was big enough that it actually snapped I just had a cheap pole. It was a Shakespeare from Walmart, but it actually snapped my pole completely in half.
The top of it, I remember.
And I had to fish this. I had to, hand line this fish in just by my 12-pound test line, and it turned out to be a really nice fishing time.
Now that little spot that you're talking about there below the dam, I know exactly where you're at. We've caught so many different types of fish there. We've caught anything from bluegill to catfish to white bass. We've caught largemouth. We've caught crappie there.
Carp.
A couple small grass pike. Real small. It was only like 12 inches or so. And me and Jess both, we are catch and release fishermen for the most part. And what I mean by for the most part is, it really just depends on the size of the fish. And we catch something that's Ohio State. Big fish Ohio.
Yeah, if it's a big fish Ohio, we're definitely keeping it for the picture, for the pin, and also so we can put it in the freezer.
Right, definitely. But if they're smaller fish, or even just fish that most people would keep, most of the time we throw them back just so they can grow up and get bigger and we can catch them again.
Yeah, not to mention most of the fish we catch and release anyway, we just catch to get a picture with it. That's our biggest thing is we like to get pictures with these fish, just to, like you could say, prove to someone when you tell them the story about a huge fish that you caught and they don't believe you, you can show them a picture of it.
And any fish that swallows the hook, we immediately cut the line, let them go, because the line will dissolve and the hook rusts out, so you never have an issue with your fish, being hurt or anything because of the hook. And then any fish that we hook in the lip, there's never any damage done because we just, unhook them and let them go. And we always make sure that they're fully recovered before we let them go.
So there's some stories about how we fish together, we hunt together. We've been friends for a long time. Dakota here actually helped build this table for the podcast. It turned out super nice, looks great. About 2 weeks ago, I actually sanded it down, and then I put some more polyurethane on the top just to give it more of a gloss, a better look. But this man right here actually brought the saws over and most of the tools that we use to break these pallets down and actually make this pallet top table. So, thanks to you that we actually got this table for the podcast. It turned out real nice. And also, as for, our future plans, as you've seen last week, if you haven't, go over to our YouTube channel, WyldLyfe Podcast, and look it up. We have one video that we posted last week. It was me and my friend Dylan. But as for guests, the two main guests that you guys will see reoccurring most often will be number one, Dakota, because we're actually starting a hunting, fishing, field and stream YouTube channel together, which when we do eventually make that and we get back into season, I'm going to put that in the description, and that'll be a few videos ahead. But also, as for Dylan, that's going to be another reoccurring guest that you'll see, quite often. Me and him will be talking about mostly sports, current events, trending topics, and then me and Dakota will be talking about things that'll actually go on our YouTube channel, which will be mostly, hunting, fishing, field and stream. Just to add to that, also with Dylan, we're going to do some business reviews also. You heard on the last podcast, if you haven't, go over and check it out. His family actually owns their own business, and they kind of build it off of what their parents had, but, it's still from scratch business, and we're going to try to do some business reviews also and, get people that are starting from scratch or picking up on a family business and trying to make it better, and we're going to try to help them, push it out there just a little bit further with our YouTube channel.
Definitely.
So those are some future plans for us. But
now, one thing that I've always said, and it's always been truth from the time we started being friends till now, Jess is the brains of the operation. I've always been the bronze of the operation, and I've kind of added to that now. And I told him before, and I'll continue to say it, that if we had an actual business and he was a CEO, I would be the field boss, if you will. I'm the guy that kind of takes his plans, implements them, and makes sure that they get done in the correct fashion. That's always been my role, and he's always been the idea guy, coming up with what we need to do, what we have to do, and he's always been the tech guy because I'm very bad with computers.
But anyhow, thank you guys for watching the WyldLyfe podcast today. If you have not seen episode 1, make sure you go back and check that out. It's on WyldLyfe Podcast on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. If you want to get notifications when we post videos, hit that notification bell. That will notify you every time we post a video. Also, for future plans, most videos are going to be posted on the weekends, usually Saturday before noon, so make sure you're checking in after noon on Saturdays. If it's not up on Saturday, that means either I had class or something going on, so I'm going to post it on Sunday before noon. So if it's not up Saturday, check on Sunday. It'll be posted before noon. If it does go to Sunday, it'll be posted in the morning.
All right, so our weekends will be our hot time.
So definitely check in every weekend. If you want to be on this podcast, you have something you think you can talk about, you have a good topic, you can send me a message on our Facebook page. You can go like and follow that at WyldLyfe Podcast on Facebook.
Yep.
That's how you can get a hold of us. You can send us a message on there. Tell us what kind of topics you have. If you have your own business or, you work out and you have like meal plans and stuff that you want to talk about, anything you want to talk about in the podcast, go ahead and send us a message. We'll definitely book you and get you on here to talk about your own experiences and your own business. But as for today, thank you guys for watching WyldLyfe Podcast. I'm your host, Jess Hayes, and this was Dakota.
Heck yeah, check us out.